I do have a small PowerPoint presentation that I want to present for you guys shortly. It's not very long. I do want to kind of jump into the software and kind of let the software speak for itself. But the agenda for today is I'm going to work through Integrated Architecture Builder, or IAB for short. We're going to present 3 demos for you guys. There's a ton to cover in this software, so this is really just going to be a taste. But we're going to cover the Project Design Assistant demo, a ControlLogix Wizard demo, and then a Slick 500 Migration Wizard. Kyle's then going to take over and review Proposal Works with you guys. You guys are going to configure some part numbers, as well as generate some BOMs and documentation associated through that software. And then look at lead times and budgeting that can be utilized inside that software as well. Finally, we'll have that Q&A piece. Just a little housekeeping. We do want to keep all those questions in the chat. There is a number of us in here, so it would be pretty confusing on unmuting everyone, but put those questions in the chat. Dustin and Zach will get to them, and we'll go from there. I do have some contact information for everyone kind of involved. If you have additional questions after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to your local specialist. Don't feel obligated to take any of this down right now. I will have this back up for you guys to view at the end and get that contact information for further questions and maybe some additional training. So with that, I kind of want to get out of PowerPoint and start moving into Integrated Architectural Builder. On my screen right now, you should see the link to download or access Integrated Architecture Builder and Proposal Works. I believe we're going to throw this link into the chat so you guys can navigate to it and start with that process. So from a high level, what is Integrated Architecture Builder? Well, Integrated Architecture Builder is a software that provides advanced selection assistance and a graphical interface for designing systems. Those systems can include product communicating over Ethernet IP and subsystems that share components with a common backplane like PLCs. You can add I/O, networks, drives, on-machine cabling, wiring, motion controls, and other devices directly to your system and generate a lot of great reports. Why would we use Integrated Architectural Builder? Well, it's simply just to kind of design our control systems and our industrial networks. IAB has several wizards that we're going to work through today that allow us to make these selections and not make mistakes, include things like terminal blocks, and also give us a lot of useful information associated to some warnings and design considerations with the selections we make. So when you access this website right here, here's the toolkit in which IAB and Proposal Works reside. Go ahead and download that now and throw it onto your PC, and you can start utilizing these software free of cost. On this page, you'll also see some videos. These videos will be very helpful for anyone that's just learning Integrated Architectural Builder, or maybe has some experience but still has some questions. Utilize these videos and definitely look at these labs that are provided right here on the website. There's another way to access these through the software, and we will get that as well. So there's a couple of places that you can view this information. So moving into the software, I do want to showcase the revision that I'm working with. Right here underneath About, you'll see that I'm using version 9.8.36. If yours differs a little bit from mine, you may not see something, but just know that Kyle will touch on the current program updater to keep your guys' software up to date. Moving into the software, I kind of want to start in this upper left-hand corner to showcase just some of the menus that IAB has. We can start in that Help tab and see those labs that we just kind of touched base on through the link that's being provided. You can see that there's some basic functionalities if you're just getting started, and even some migrations if you have that legacy equipment hanging out. You can download the PDF right here, and then it even has a time or a duration it will take to complete that lab. So a really good resource for anyone starting out or trying to further their knowledge of IAB. Underneath that Health tab, we also have a link to those videos that we kind of showcase. So just a couple places that you can find that information and continue on with IAB after this presentation. Underneath our View tab, of course, this is just where we control our toolbars. I would recommend kind of having everything checked and on, as you will use a lot of the shortcuts when you become more familiar with IAB as a whole. So nothing too crazy there, but just note that that's where those toolbars are found. Underneath the options, there is two option tabs that I want to cover with you. And the first is this IAB options. I would definitely recommend to have this display startup dialog box checked, and you'll see that momentarily as we kind of kick off the demos of what that is. It's just a really easier way for people to get started in IAB with opening or starting new projects, and just kind of help streamline everything. Underneath this tab, you can also view your pricing. We will be using system pricing today, but if you do have special pricing, you can load that into this for better budgeting. Get with your automation specialist after this meeting if you want to work on loading that pricing. It can be a little complicated, but we can help you with that piece of it. The other options tab is the reporting options. So with this information, we do configure that software and we do generate a number of reports. And this just controls kind of what your reports look like. One recommendation I would make is this organized BOM. This organized BOM basically, instead of just having a large bill of material, does kind of organize it down to a subsystem level so you can stay a little bit more organized as you're utilizing those reports. Underneath your keywords here, this is where you can start implementing like who you are, your company, maybe a project name to kind of keep some of this stuff separate from one another as you develop multiple systems. But that's just really good information to know. Underneath our actions tab, if we were to have a project open right now, we could start adding some hardware, adding networks, really starting to manipulate the software. I don't typically use this too often, but it is there. Underneath the file tab, we will see a number of exports. We are going to work with these exports as we kind of dive into some of these demos. For right now, we're just going to go ahead and kind of jump right in to IAB. When we create a new project, we are prompted with this window. Underneath this window, we are given a number of templates that we can start utilizing. If you just wanted to select some hardware, you could definitely open up that hardware piece of it. If you maybe wanted to start with your network piece, you could start here, or software. A great recommendation for anyone new kind of starting out is this project design assistant. Here you can basically input the needs for your control system and start developing some hardware, getting some bill of materials and making that network. And that's where we're going to start today. There's also some family wizards that we will dive into here a little later. And then of course that migration assistant that helps us take that legacy equipment to a new modern day part number and active part number in the Rockwell automation world. So when we select this design assistant, of course, we can name our project. For this one, we're going to call it SMC Electric. No, what's this called? SMC Much. How about that? We can select where we want to save it, and I'm fine with the desktop, and then click Create. When we click Create, we're going to see this menu pop. We're going to kind of dive right into what we want this control system to do, or what the requirements of our control system are. So for the controller requirements, if you needed that conformally coded option or that extreme temperature, you could make those selections right here. For this demo, we're definitely not going to need anything like that. So we can kind of move on and move right into our Ethernet. We do want the Ethernet communication, and we want to utilize a switch. If you wanted to use a linear or a ring, you would see that switch disappear, and then you could start configuring your system based off that. But for this, we want to use a switch. And right now, here's the current switch that we have selected. If you wanted to edit your switch selection, you definitely could click the icon, and it'll pop up in an additional window. From this window at the top, we'll see some sorting tools that we can basically kind of start configuring what our needs are for a switch. You could also just kind of look through the part numbers that Rockwell Automation provides in the switching world and make some comparisons on the right-hand side between those switches. For this project, I'm going to go with the new Stratix 5800 and go with that 10-port option and select OK. So now we see our switch is populated in there, and we can start looking into the I/O for this system. Of course, if you were doing it, you would configure based off your I/O. I'm just going to put some arbitrary numbers in there and start working through this system. For the inputs, I've selected 16 for both AC and DC. For the safety inputs, I'm not going to have any on this particular project, so we can bypass that. For the outputs, I am going to have 16 digital outputs and 16 DC digital outputs. Once again, I'm not touching that safety piece for this demo. We can move into analog, where we're going to add some additional analog. And we're not going to worry about RTDs, thermocouplers, or high-speed counting in this facility here. So once we have our I/O populated into our system, we can go ahead and select Next. When we select next, we're going to see some product families that probably most of you are familiar with, but give us a great understanding of what we can satisfy these needs with. Notice that there's a lot of offerings here. For the sake of this project, I know that I really like that 5069 processing family, and I've also kind of standardized on maybe on a control logic solution, so I'm going to make those two selections. If you didn't know exactly where you wanted to be, there are a lot of PDFs right here that can be accessed. Simply clicking on that will take you to some documentation to review each of those offerings. You also can have a pretty good chart on your right-hand side here that compares the different selections. And we can also make selections based off the processor right here before we ever get started. So maybe we're moving more towards that L80 series at our facility. We can make that selection, see how that changes, and the documentation changes along with that. So now that we kind of have it narrowed down to, we know that this is going to be a control logics or a compact 5069 solution, we can go ahead and perform an analysis. When this analysis is done, we will get some pretty valuable information for selecting our control system. Once this loads, we will work through that. So now we see an estimated cost here. Once again, this is list cost. If you had your cost loaded, it would showcase that. We can review those bill of materials right here with a simple click and kind of break it down by quantity and part number. We could export that if we wanted to. That just really gives you a good comparison between the two units. For this one, maybe we're more on a budgetary solution. So we're going to select that 5069 compact logic solution and click generate hardware. When we generate the hardware, we can now navigate to that hardware on our lower left-hand view. This is where you can kind of jump back and forth between multiple views. We're going to select that hardware and see our 5069 processor and cards that we configured. When we hover over that processor, of course, we're going to get the part number. We're also going to get the terminal blocks that have been automatically generated. And then we're going to get some FPDs that are required as we make that differentiate from AC to DC power. So a lot of great things happening here. IAB has not allowed us to make some mistakes associated with the need of that card and the terminal blocks. If you wanted to stop here, you definitely could and generate a bill of material, but I want to look at the network piece of this and maybe add some hardware to this system. So we see our processor here and the connection that it's made to our switch. If we wanted to add some additional devices, we definitely can. Located at the bottom here is a large list underneath Ethernet IP of some Rockwell components that can be added. And for this demo, we're going to add a drive. So if we expand our drives and motors, go into our compact drives, maybe we want to add that PowerFlex 525. Here's the part number. We would simply click, drag it, and it's going to prop a menu. When this menu is popped, we'll take a look at it, and it's going to look very familiar as Kyle goes into his demos with Proposal Works, but now we can start configuring that drive. You're going to have to satisfy all these red needs, or at least until this is not grayed out and allows you to hit accept. So for this one, we're okay with that 120 volts AC. For our output, we're okay with that half horse 2.5 amp. Notice that we can't hit accept yes because we need to satisfy that circuit protection. And for this, we're going to put no circuit protection. So now we have a good active part number. We can select accept, and it's going to throw that drive in there and connect it to our network ready to go. Other things that we can add from here is maybe we need an HMI. So we expand this computers and operators interface. We go into our graphic terminals, and maybe we want to throw a panel view +7. And we like the performance models, and we have a lot of 10 inches, so we can expand that. Here's your part numbers that are associated to those selections. This first one is going to be fine for this. Once again, we click and drive, and now we have that keypad/touch solution right there in our system, ready to go. The last thing that I want to add to this system is some distributed I/O. We expand the distributed I/O here, and of course, we have a number of offerings from Rockwell. But for this one, I want to standardize on that compact system, and I want to expand into the 5069 and then the communication modules. Here, you're going to get the flavors of communication modules. Of course, you have that conformally coded version, but we're not going to need that. We will click and drag that AENTR into our system, and you see it kind of populate there. Notice that we don't have any cards. If we wanted to add cards, we could go ahead and double click on there. We could start configuring this for the IO that we need in addition. Maybe we need some additional IA16s. We would just simply click and drag, and maybe one more DC card. And once again, we see that FPD card as we go from AC to DC populated into our system. So now we have a pretty good control system going. So what do we do from here inside of IAB? Well, there's a couple things. We can go ahead and export a BOM, or we can look at maybe some of our field and control power. So these wizards here will allow us to associate power to all the devices that we have. If we click on the control power wizard here, you will see a number of power supplies located in the top right-hand corner. And as we make those selections, a description on the right-hand side. If we don't know exactly what all these are eating up, we can go ahead and start at that lowest level, add in a 5-amp power supply, and then move everything over underneath that power supply. But notice the utilization of this power supply and how it's kind of way out of specs for what we're going to need. So we're going to have to update that power supply. Simply remove it. All of our hardware will go back to the left-hand side. We can upsize to that 10 amp and then reassociate everything and watch that utilization become more acceptable. So a really great feature right there for the power side of things is sometimes I can get into the weeds a little quick. So now that we have that power supply associated, we can click OK, and it will be added to our bill of materials when we run a report later. If you knew the field wiring, you could definitely dive into the field wiring piece of this. Once again, you could add that power supply, look at that controller rack, and add that output card. Of course, we see that utilization a little high. We would simply remove that, upsize to our next system, reassociate it, and see that that's going to work out, at least for that. You know, there's some other things that we'd have to take into consideration here, but a really good tool as we kind of work for our control systems. Now that we have power and our control systems, we could go ahead and export this BOM, whether we were going to send it to an SI or distributor for quote. You can do that a couple of ways. There's an icon right here for project BOM, or you can do it underneath file, project BOM. For this one, we're going to go ahead and click that icon, and it's going to prompt us a window here. So basically, it's wanting us to visit our project checker, which is going to give us some warnings. Of course, we have 2 warnings selected here, so we're going to go ahead and dive into what those warnings are. When we expand these down, we're going to get a number of information from IAB, and as well as some links to some Rockwell literature to review this a little bit farther. So right now we just have some field power that's maybe not satisfied, and we kind of knew that as we didn't have all the information needed. And then that Panel View Plus 7 Series B stainless steel is going to have some design considerations associated with that. You could definitely copy and paste this link and review those farther. For this case, we're going to go ahead and move on and be okay with those at this time. So once you go back out of that, of course, you'll have to hit BOM again, and then this time just continue towards that generation of the BOM. We are going to save it, and then when this BOM populates it, we will export it to Excel. So right here, you could have a good review. Notice that it did add some software in there based off our system. It added Machine Edition for our panel view, as well as Studio 5000 for our processor. If you didn't need those or already had them, of course, you can delete that, and we'll showcase that here inside of Excel. So when we export this to Excel, we would just have a saved location and then open it. Of course, this system can completely be customized. We can remove things. We can add to things. We have our quantities, our part numbers, our descriptions, and then, of course, that list pricing. If you had your pricing, it would populate that here, but we see our power supplies that we selected, the software that was automatically generated, all the terminal blocks and cards associated to that compact logic system that we created. So pretty good usable information there. The last thing I want to do inside of IAB for this first demo is actually export this file to a workable Studio 5000. Underneath File, if you click Export to Studio 5000, it will prompt you and tell you that that switch will not be encompassed, which we are okay with. We'll select OK here. Of course, make sure that this is selected for the chassis or system that you want to export. Click Save and then View Files. These files are what need to be imported into Studio 5000 to generate this, and mainly you're looking for this L5X file here. So we can minimize this solution, go to the desktop, open up Studio 5000, click Import, locate that L5X file, open it. When it opens, it will ask us to import once again inside of Studio, and then we will review kind of how all that was brought in. Here Studio is opening, and we are going to select Import one more time. We're going to get a status bar as this imports into Studio 5000, and then we can review the tree on our left-hand side. So see that the system that we just configured is now brought into Studio 5000 and ready to hit the ground running with programming. And we have that 5069 processor available in the backplane and all the cards that we just configured, as well as that PowerFlex 525 and the remote I/O that we made in our selection menus. So now we're ready to go with this control system, being that if we could buy the hardware and go from there. So that's a pretty cool feature that IAB offers. So big time saver. So that kind of concludes the first demo of what I wanted to showcase inside of IAB associated to the Project Design Assistant. I'm now going to close this and we'll open up another IAB project and move into a control logic solution. So we do want to establish the connection to the internet when this pops, and then here is that menu that I told you guys to turn on earlier. This just gives you a really good starting point, feels like Studio, really nice. So we'll click Create New Project. Once again, when we create that new project, we are met with this menu here. We could rename the project to SMC Control Logics. We're fine with that desktop location, but this time we do want to select this control logics from the family wizard. When we click create, we will be prompted with another menu, and we can start jumping right into configuring our control logic system. So notice right off the bat, we have allow IO in our controller chassis. That's pretty standard unless we want to use a redundant system. When we select that redundant system, this will be grayed out because we all know that we cannot have I/O in our controller chassis when utilizing a redundant system. We're going to go ahead and make a redundant system for this demo and move on into our chassis size. You could leave this to auto size, but maybe you've standardized on this or want to have some room for growth. You can make other selections. For this one, we will make a 10-slot chassis, but know that this is customizable as we move through with this demo. We're fine with the 120 volt AC, and if you had other preferences on the wiring method, you could make them right here in the top right-hand corner. I prefer the screw, so I'm going to leave that screw selected. If you did want to add some spare chassis slots for future growth, you could make that selection here. I am not going to, and I'm going to move on to my I/O preferences. For my I/O preferences, I do want to have that spare, just so I don't have to maybe get additional cards as I grow. I can already have maybe some spare I/O available. So I'm going to put it 20% in there and then move into our network preferences. For our network preferences, I do want to create a network regardless of the I/O count, and I do want to have it at Ethernet. With this, you can do a couple of different things. If you wanted to do the CPWE zone setup and take into consideration some of your enterprise zones or industrial DMZs, you most definitely could. For this demo here, we are going to bypass that and go with more of a freeform, simple network. We do want that star topology, and we do want a switch. For the switch, once again, if you wanted to kind of drill down based off your needs, you absolutely could right here with this selection menu. If you wanted to compare, once again, there's a great comparison chart right here associated to the part number. For this one, I'm just going to standardize on that 5800, similar to how we did last time, and select OK. Now that we have kind of our chassis preferences in there, we can move on to our next menu, which would be the digital inputs. For this system, we are going to put in some sync non-isolated DC inputs. Of course, you would make this match your system as you were kind of configuring through this. And then we do want some outputs associated to the normally open isolated. If you wanted to change the voltage of any of these as you kind of move through it, you definitely could. Or if you wanted that diagnostics feature or fused, you can make those selections right here. For this, we're just going to keep moving forward with our normally open isolated. As we move into the analog, notice that our inputs and outputs are on one screen as there's not a ton of selections similar to our other options. We do want to go with some current isolated. So we'll throw 5 in there and then maybe 4 over here. And that will satisfy all our analog needs. So we'll click next. Here, if you wanted to get into the motion, you definitely could. You could add that SIP or Circos communication for any kind of motion. We're not going to cover motion today as it gets a little bit more than what we can cover in an hour. But if you wanted more information, please get with your specialist on that and move forward. Our last configuration here is for distributed I/O, and we definitely want to use the existing network for our I/O and move forward from there. Once we make that selection, we will be met with the hardware selection that IAB has generated. Here you can name your chassis, so SMC control logics, and you can manipulate any selection that IAB has made. So if you wanted to take this to an L83 processor, you definitely could with just that drop-down menu there. If you wanted to change the communication modules, maybe you wanted the redundancy piece of it, you could absolutely drop it down and make that selection as well. For this, we're okay with that, and we're going to keep moving forward. If you had any kind of specialty modules that needed to be added with this, you can make those selections here. We're not going to add anything for that and just click finish. When we click finish, it is going to prompt us with a menu to configure our distributed I/O that we made the selection that we did need distributed I/O at that last menu. We'll click yes and open up the configuration menu for that distributed I/O. Notice on your right-hand side, these are the offerings from Rockwell Automation associated to distributed I/O. If we make different selections over here, you'll see how those compatibilities change with an X and a check based off our selections. For this, we're going to, of course, utilize Ethernet. We want to use our existing network, and you would make that selection to your SMC control logics chassis that you just created. We're fine with the star topology, but we do want to standardize that switch to that 5800 so everything looks similar. Make that selection, select OK, and continue onward. Here, if you had any IP67 or intrinsically safe requirements, you can make those selections and see how the available hardware on the right changes. For this, we are not going to utilize that and start moving into our digital inputs and outputs. For our digital inputs, we're going to add some additional sync. For our outputs, we're going to add some additional normally open isolated. Once again, if you were living in this space here, you could select your voltage and anything needed, like conformally coded diagnostics, etc., and watch that available product family change. We're fine here, so we're going to move into our analog piece. For the analog piece, we'll add some additional current isolated and current isolated outputs, and then we'll click next. Here it's going to look a little bit different than it has in the past, as it's gave us a couple of selections on what we can utilize for this system. If you open up each of these, you could, of course, review the hardware as well as the bill of material to showcase that cost, if cost was a driver for the product family selection. There again, that's that list cost piece. For this, we're going to standardize on the control logics piece of it and go ahead and finish as no specialty modules are needed. When we click finish, it's going to ask us if we have any more distributed I/O, and we're going to say no. If you did, you would just simply click yes and work through that menu again. Now that this has been configured, we'll take a look at our network view and see how we can kind of drag everything around. That's our 2 switch selections and our redundant processor here. You get a great view of your network and can start diving in even farther. Here you could make some cable selections if you wanted to change maybe the color, the gauge, the length, etc. All right there in that network view. For the sake of time, we're not going to, but if you want to review this farther, please reach out to SMC Electric with any request revolving around that. Some other things we notice is that we have a lot of spare slash empty slots here in our chassis. If we wanted to mitigate that, we could definitely double click on it, and it takes us to that hardware view associated to that chassis. If we right click on the chassis, we can configure that chassis and manipulate that to our liking. Maybe we want to downsize that chassis to a 7 slot, which still gives us some spares, and add some empty slot fillers. We would make those selections and hit OK. If you had to change your power supply, that's where you would do it as well. Notice now that our chassis has been shrunk down to a 7 slot, and the N2s have been populated in there to hold that space. Continuing down the hardware view here, we now open our redundant system here. We can make the same changes by simply right-clicking and selecting Configure Chassis. We once again go with that 7 slot and add our fillers and select OK. Now that system has been downsized, but plenty of room to still grow based off any communication needs. As we go into our distributed I/O chassis, we can still make any changes here that we need. Let's go ahead and standardize on that 7 and encompass our slot fillers, and the same with this last piece here. Notice how these cards have been grayed out, and that is not really a normal view for the rest of our project. When we hover over that, it will give us a description that this card has been discontinued from Rockwell Automation. Not a big deal. We can make those changes right here. Simply right-click on the module, remove that IF6I, select OK, navigate down into your I/O modules, analog, and look for that IF8I card that is now active inside of Rockwell Automation. You will have to make a distinction here between current or voltage based off your needs. Simply click and drag, select OK, and bam, we are back into an active IF8 card. We'll do the same thing for this output card. We'll remove the module. We will minimize our inputs, navigate to our output cards, look for that OF8I, and input. So now we're back, no grayed out cards, and we have a great system in the works. Of course, at that network view, if we wanted to add any kind of HMI or drives associated to this system, we could simply click and drag like we did in the first demo. For this system, I think we're in really good shape, and we can start looking at some other features that Rockwell has. A great feature is this advanced communications detail. When we open that, we're going to get a lot of utilization associated to our systems that we just configured. A big one that we touch or have asked a lot is the memory associated to these units. Now, these are not going to take account AOIs and other programming memory eaters, but it is going to showcase the hardware that you currently have in your IAB and the utilization around that. It's also going to show you those Ethernet IP nodes, basically what you're using and the remaining, and give you a ton of scan time and other diagnostics that you can kind of compare as you build your system. These colors will change as they kind of get closer to that utilization eatage, and you can make appropriate modifications from there. So a really handy tool. This is also available in a readout form that we will do here momentarily, but just wanted to show you where that was at and what it looked like. Another thing that we can do is that project completion wizard. So if we wanted to look at our warnings and things, we could make that selection here, review those, maybe navigate to any links that are shared to see what those warnings are, maybe the design requirements around them, and make those selections as well. The one other thing we can do is complete your architecture. So this is a great tool for adding those input and output devices directly into your system. For the sake of time, we're not going to touch too much here, but know that if you wanted to add circuit protection, power solutions, output devices, you definitely can and configure all that within IAB that would be associated to the bill of material and project readouts as you export those. One thing I do want to export from this that we did not do with the first demo is to generate a Word report. This Word report is going to be a complete readout. Once again, it's going to navigate you to that project checker. We kind of already did that briefly, so we're going to continue to our bill of material generator, select our save location, and click OK. When this opens up, we will kind of review what this report looks like and the information that's available. This report is something great to share with both SIs and distributors as you guys work through your design requirements here. And once this opens up, we'll kind of get a better feel for what this looks like and the information available. We'll click yes, and it will open up in Word. And once again, this is completely customizable. So we get that good header and the author, the date, a lot of great information. We also get a table of contents to kind of navigate through this report associated to the build that we just created. Some other information we get is associated to the networks. Of course, we do not have any device net or control net, so we could simply delete that for the sake of not getting confused as we work farther with this system. We keep coming down and get things associated to sustainability and security. We also get some information on the control logics, which is the hardware that we decided to go with. We get some additional information on the Ethernet IP, some features in the integrated experience, that security piece again there, and then those warnings that we did not review for a second time. They will stay with the project so that there is no way to kind of forget about them. So you can you're more than welcome to kind of follow these links to knowledge base articles and other design requirements to read through those and make the appropriate changes. You get a lot of great information around the architecture view that we created. You'll also get a network view that looks very similar here in a minute. You get your complete bill of material right here in one usable document. Of course, this is list price. Once again, if you were loading your pricing, you would see more of a budgetary documentation here. It's broke down by those subsystems as well. That's that organized piece that I had recommended that you guys have selected and gives a really great readout of what you've selected, the quantities needed, the part numbers, and a description. Some other information that is available in this document is that network detail looks very similar to the architecture drawing, but just another place for it. You get some performance there as well as some hardware information. So we get our chassis that we created, we get the power supplies that were selected, the utilization of those power supplies, the height and width and dimensions of our control system, as well as the depth, which is ever important as we're kind of speccing out some panels. We also get a complete dimension for the cards and everything associated to that chassis. So a lot of great usable information as we kind of develop this control system. The last thing I want to touch on in this report is just that readout for the utilization. So here it is in a complete report that you guys can review and make notes on associated to the performance of your control system. So a lot of great information right there inside these reports that IAB generates with a click of a button. So that is kind of the last thing I wanted to show for the control logics piece. Like I said, I know this is a ton of information. Please reach out. We are happy to work with you guys moving forward. We're going to go ahead and move on to my last demo here, and then Kyle's going to take over. I did not want to do that survey, but we did it anyways. So we'll go back into IAB, and we're going to do a migration assistant. Maybe some of you guys have some legacy hardware still out there and don't know where to start with it, or maybe haven't touched it too much. This is a great tool to start understanding what it would take to migrate that to an active system. When we select new project, once again, we're met with those templates. We're going to utilize the SLIC 500 migration template for this demo. We're going to select create, and it's going to open a menu that wants us to build the existing SLIC chassis inside of our cabinet. We're simply going to add chassis. We're going to name that chassis and then select OK. When we do that, we're going to see this menu pop, and you're going to add your existing rack, and it's going to spit out an active rack. On the left-hand side, you can make changes to what you want to build. Right now, it's kind of on a Compact Logix 5069. Maybe we're more of a Control Logix user. We can make that selection here. If you know your existing power supply, of course, you can make that selection. Same with the chassis size right here on the left-hand side. Now it's kind of time to start adding exactly what that slick system is. You can narrow down to your processor here, simply click and drag into your existing rack, and it's going to ask you some questions. Well, what processor do you want to use moving forward? Well, maybe I don't know. Well, there's some good information right here associated to the memory of the existing controller, and I can make that selection knowing and feeling comfortable with that L81E to satisfy that slick's needs. I'll select OK, and you'll see both of them prop. Now we can move into the I/O. Maybe we have some digital that needs to be in there. Once we drag and drop that card, of course, it spits out the appropriate Control Logix card right there. Once again, we'll add one more IA16 and see that populate here. Maybe we have some DC inputs. Continue through and see those populate right into our new Control Logix system. The last thing, maybe we have some additional I/O, maybe some fancy cards there. We click, it's going to have the most compatible configuration right here. We'll select OK. Maybe the ever popular NI4. Now we have a selection to make. Are we using current? Are we using voltage? For this one, I know it's current. We make that selection and click OK. Once we have our system, existing slick system made right here, we can click OK and generate that hardware. Once that hardware generates, it's going to generate down here in this hardware tab, and we're going to see that control system that we just created. From here, of course, you could add it to a network. You could kind of do some similar things that we just did, associating to adding additional hardware, reports, all that good stuff. But that's how we get from a slick to a Control Logix system. With that, I'm going to export this bill of material to ProposalWorks, and then I'm going to pass the torch off to Kyle to start covering that piece. If you wanted to export this to ProposalWorks, you would simply click File, Export to ProposalWorks, find your save location, click Save, and then watch that be generated into a usable ProposalWorks file. It's going to ask you some questions associated to how you want that to look. My favorite is that organized bill of material, so I'm going to stay with that selection and click OK. It's going to start generating that report, and then we can review that in ProposalWorks and let Kyle take over for the remainder of this webinar. Just a minute, and we'll have this ready. We do want to open that. And we see that populate in ProposalWorks right here. So there's the chassis, there's the power supply, the controller, and everything that we configured right there with that list pricing. So that is what I had for you guys on an introduction to IAB. I'm sure there's some questions, but we will go over those when Kyle is completed. With that, Kyle, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Roth, and I'm there we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Roth. I'm a local smart component specialist at the Cape Girardeau area, and I wanted to thank everybody for your time during this webinar. ProposalWorks is a good tool for configuring components based off requirements and also finding accessories compatible with your configurations. It's a user-friendly in the sense that it will ask required questions to build and complete part numbers. Before I open this up, I wanted to briefly go over Current Program Updater. With Current Program Updater, it comes with the toolbar link that Lucas showcased at the beginning of his presentation. ProposalWorks and other software comes with that download. But it's pretty imperative to do weekly, bi-weekly checks for updates on your software. It gives our version information. We're running ProposalWorks version 11 today, but with this update, it's going to give you best current updated lead times, product updates, and any additions, anything along those lines. It's going to keep that stuff up to date. So opening up proposal works. It's going to prompt us with a question if we want to connect to the internet. Yes, we want to establish that since we are connected to the internet. So kind of on the home screen here, we've got our layout, we've got our product library, proposal outlines, etc. here to the left. We've got our equipment list here in the center, and up on the top are some toolbars. Home is the page we're at now. We've got file where we can open existing projects, import, export projects like Lucas just showed exporting to proposal works for the IAB. We can also import it directly from here. We have documents tabs where we can get drawings and supplements over the product, and tools where we can utilize software like Crossworks, or here's another link to IAB. So I'm going to start out, we're just going to configure a few parts, and then we'll run through a few of the options and features that it shows on the equipment list once I get a few generated. So here we have a keyword filter and a catalog number filter. So keyword filter is good for if you don't quite know the catalog number, any of the part number associated to what you're trying to build. You can just put a phrase. So the first product I'm going to go through with you is a PowerFlex. We can just type PowerFlex into the keyword filter, and it'll pull all applicable selections here that we can drill down and find what we're looking for. We can also put other phrases like part of the bulletin. If we're looking for 755s, we can put in 755 into the drill down selections. But for this purpose, I do know the beginning part of my catalog number is 20G. So we can put that in and it'll just drill down those catalog numbers that start with 20G. We'll click on this first one, the 750 series, and this configurator will load, and it will prompt you with a bunch of questions that need to be answered to configure complete part number. First question is our bulletin number. Since we're in the 750 series, it's either 753 or 755. We'll go ahead and do 755 so we get that embedded Ethernet. Next question going down is, are we in a corrosive gas protection or cooling type? We will just stick standard with that. Moving down the list, we have voltage class. Here we can select what voltage we'll be utilizing. We're going to pick 483 phase, and our output current. So if we need extra documentation provided with this, we can click this selection. We've got option modules, mechanical accessories, spare parts, accessory kits, and reactors. We can all drill down and get those parts configured. For our case, we say we just need an external HIM mounted to our door since it's going in an enclosure. We'll click on the option modules, and here we'll be able to see all of our available options. So we've got IO modules, encoder modules, power supply, speed monitoring, safe torque off, all the way down to different communication protocols. But we just want to do a external HIM, so we can select this remote human interface full numeric keypad. And if just by clicking on it, we'll automatically generate it in our accessory list. And we have all of our selections configured up here, so it does change this accept box to solid black. We can't hit accept unless it's a complete configured part number. So let's go ahead and hit accept and add that to our equipment list. And it populates it into our BOM over here. So Next one I'll go through, say we need a control tower light for our system. We can go ahead and just put control tower light in our keyword filter and it'll drill it down. Or for this purpose, we do know the beginning part. We want to do an 856T stack light. And it's going to prompt every applicable configuration in the library down here. So we're going to go with a configured stack light since we need multiple. When we click our net, it's going to open up the configuration. And the first little tab up here, it's going to say assembly. Do we need factory user assembled? You'll see this on quite a few different products in Proposal Works. The one thing I would say is factory assemble sometimes leads to a little bit longer lead times, because if you get into the more the non-standardized stuff and you want that assembled in the factory, it's a little bit longer process to do. So for our case, we'll just start with user assembled. And moving down the list in the stack light data, we've got network options. So if we are utilizing IO link or not needing it, we can select it here. We'll just select no network option. Now we're moving along to the base of the tower light. We can select that anything through here. We can do a M5, M8, or M12 8-pin, 5-pin. We can do aluminum pole with different variants of lengths, or vertical mounts, or we can just do the 1/2-inch MPT base, and that's what I'll select with here. Next question is our voltage class. If we're going to use a multi-voltage 3-circuit or 7-circuit, we can select that here, or if we've standardized our 24-volt AC/DC, we can just go ahead and hit that. The next question, we're going to get on to the level 1 module type. That's going to be the first level after your base. When you click on the selections, it's going to give you all options that you can go through. We've got steady LED, multi-function, rotating LED, multicolor, recordable sounders, and it gives you a little bit of information underneath each one. For our case, we just need a steady light. And once we configure that, it's going to ask us level 1 lens color, and we can configure which color we want. We'll just select green for this purpose. The next question is going down to level 2 module type. Again, we'll just do that steady LED, and we'll select amber for the level 2 lens color. And we'll add one more light. So module type, we can do just another steady LED, and we'll go red. So to top it off, we do want a sounder module. So level 4 module type, when we select that, we can do 1-circuit sounder, recordable sounder, transducer. If you notice, all these have top on here. That is going to complete your options for being able to add more onto it. If you do need to go back and add another color, you just have to deselect this and then change it to a steady LED, and you can pick that next color you need. So we do have a complete part number here. We can hit accept. And once it generates, it's going to show all of the individual components on your BOM part by part and give their descriptions. So we have all these drilled out here. So say we do want to have this factory assembled, we can just go back into here, change it to factory assembled, hit accept, and it's going to change it to one line item with a one long part generated number for that. Let's configure a light curtain. Again, we can just type in light curtain, and it'll pull all options available for you. But if we do know that we want to go 450, we can just put the 450L in there, and it's going to only pull up that option. So opening up this product configuration, it's going to start with the light curtain transceiver sticks. The first question, if quantity of transceiver sticks, select 2 for one system setup, multiples of 2 for multiple systems, or select 1 for replacement. So we've got that option of just, do you want a spare part replacement, multi-function system, etc. So when we click on that, we do have the 450LB, which is the standard, or the 450LE with the enhanced options. Start mode blinking, external devices, optical laser alignment. So we're going to go ahead and just add 2 of those since we got a new system here. Moving down the list, our next question that needs to be answered is resolution. Our two options are 14 millimeter for finger detection or 30 millimeter for hand detection. This is a pretty hazardous application, so we'll just go ahead and do a finger detection. And then the next question is going to be product height. It gives your options in millimeters or inches. Just arbitrarily pick one. And if you notice that we do have a configured part number for our transceiver stick, so it does give us that option to just accept that if we need it. But we have a whole system to configure, so let's keep moving down the list. So our plug-in modules are our next things that need to be configured. And when you click on the receiver option, it's going to give you all options for the receivers. We can do just on and off 5-pin. We can do the receiver with the EDM. It's 8-pin or blanking, muting, Ethernet if we need that. But say we've standardized on the universals, so it's less product in our inventory that we have to keep. We can just select that. And then same as our transmitter, we'll go into there. There's the options for that, but we just, like I said, we're going to stick with that universal one. The next question is going to ask if we are having a cascading solution. So we can go into there and configure for cascading purposes. We're not going to dig into that too much, but the next question is pretty useful for selecting a safety relay interface. It's going to give a lot of good options for safety relays that we can pair with these light curtains, and we can select if we've standardized on one, or if we're comfortable with one, we can select that one out and get it added to our relay. So another neat feature with selecting a light curtain through here is when we select our plugins, it's automatically going to pair our cord sets that match with those. It's just going to give us the generic 5 meter, but say we need to change the length or the color or the pin, or if we don't need it at all, we can remove it here from the BM, or we can click this cord set and patch cords, and it's going to pull up another screen to completely reconfigure your cord set that you need. Same with the transmitter right there. Down below at the bottom, we do have accessories, so we can get into mirrors or weld shields if we need those. Let's say we're in a high vibration atmosphere. We can click on accessories here. It's going to pull everything from different mounting kits to optical interface, laser alignments, test rods. But we do want to do a shock mount. So here we have right here, it's 2 per kit, so we need 4 for a complete set. So we'll go ahead and change that to a quantity of 2, and we can accept it, and it's going to add it to our equipment list. So there we have everything. We've got our light curtains, our plugins, our safety relay, our shock mount kits, and our patch cords. We can manipulate the quantities over here if we need additional, but for this purpose, we'll just leave it how we configured. I'm going to configure one more product, and then we'll get into some of the benefits and other features of the software. Again, if we, I'm going to configure a photoelectric switch. So again, if we don't know what we're looking for, we can just type in generic phrases in the keyword filter to drill down to some of our more options. Or if we do know we're standardized, like say on a 42 EF, we can just put that in here, and then we can go ahead and open up our configuration. Again, it's going to ask you a list of questions, starting from the top down. It's what kind of sensing mode do you need? We'll just pick standard diffuse, but here we could do retroreflective, polarized, retroreflective, transmitter, beam, emitter, and receiver. So we'll just click standard diffused. Light source, so if we need infrared, visible red LED, we can select that option here. And it's automatically going to put our maximum sensing distance based on the what's offered for that product line. Next question is going to be operating voltage and mode. We can click whether we need AC, DC, light, dark operate. We'll just say we'll need DC dark, DC light operate. When you do click that, it's going to automatically import a few other selections that we had. So our output type is going to be both NPN and PNP, and our sensitivity is going to be adjustable. So the last question we need to do is connection type. We can select if we are standardizing pre-leads or 6-inch pigtail micro quick disconnect. We can select the disconnect, and if you do notice, it's automatically going to load that suggested patch cord or connection media to it. And if we do need to manipulate the distance or color or anything, we can change that in through here or remove it if we don't need it. The last option for selections is going to be an accessory mounting bracket. It's not needed if you don't need it, but it's going to give you any bracket that is applicable to the sensor you selected. So all these grayed out ones will not work with it. It's only going to let you select the ones that will work with it. If you do notice here on the side is some drawings. We can click on them to get a little bit better view of the dimensions and how they look. So say this one works, we'll just click on that and we'll add it to our BOM. Hitting accept is going to generate that into our equipment list. And here it's added, and we'll just stop there. So getting into a few of the features, say we have multiple different projects that we have on our equipment list here, and we want to kind of separate them out. We can right click and insert group. And it's going to add these little headers. We can manipulate them to where we need them. And we can change them according to what project we're working on. So panel A. We'll just stick with one. So say we do want to get our subtotal for each different panel, we can right click and hit insert subtotal. It is going to add our subtotal down here to our bottom and in between underneath what we have. We can move that around to wherever we want on our BOM, and it's going to change your subtotal based off of that. So a few neat features that I want to highlight now are this current status and this estimated lead times. Over here, we do have the list cost. As Lucas said, you can load customer pricing in that and then get with your local specialist if you're interested in that. But over here, your current status is going to tell you if it's active, mature, obsolete, and it's going to give you all that information to know you're getting in the latest and greatest product. The estimated lead time over here is a add-on extension to proposal work, so we will attach that into the chat with a list of instructions and details of how to get that added. And these are one of the two biggest reasons to keep your program updated current and checked on a weekly, bi-weekly. It's going to give you that most accurate estimated lead time and that current status. Let me just import. So say we need to add some terminal blocks to this, and we already know the part number, so we can just put our part number directly into here and hit enter, and it's going to bring it down at the bottom. Few other neat features. So going into documents, so say you need to look at technical data, product profiles, installation, product drawings, we can get that through here. If we want to get our 2D dimensional drawings on our drive, we can double click on that and it's going to open up a bunch of DWG files that we can utilize. We can go into the supplements and we can get installation instructions. That's going to put your Rockwell website, and it'll load that for you. So there's going to pull up the installation instructions, and you can utilize that all through there and look at anything you might need to. And drilling down every part, it's going to have a bunch of information, user manuals, photos, product profiles, and drawings down the line. So a few other features, say you've got a obsolete part, you know it's obsolete, but you don't quite know what the current product's going to be. You can still put that old part number into here in this catalog number. And hit enter, and a dialog will pop up. Product assistance, it's going to give you the information on the obsolete part, 0.1 to 0.16 amps, and it's going to tell you it was discontinued in 2022. Below that, replacement information, it's going to give you that migration path, and it's going to tell you it's a functional replacement. If you hover over that, it'll give you the definition of direct, functional, or engineered replacement based off of the product you're migrating. So say we're okay with that, we can go ahead and hit replace, and it's going to automatically load that new part into our equipment list. Let me get into Crossworks real quick. So opening tools in Crossworks. This is a good tool for if we do have just any part number, we can put it into here. I'm just going to copy and paste for this case. We can copy and paste it into here, and it's going to give us a cross path to a Rockwell component. So by here, it's telling us, it's still giving us, it's a telemechanique sensor, IFM connection system. It's going to give the equivalent Rockwell catalog number. If there's any notes associated to it, it'll give you some, if there's differences, it'll highlight those out, and it'll give a description of the product. So we can accept that if we want to add these to our BOM. And it's going to put them down at the bottom. So say our equipment list is done and we want to generate this into an Excel file. We can click this tab over here. We have our options for Word, Excel. I usually stick with Excel. A dialog is going to pop up with our options that we want to see in our report. So if we wanted have catalog number, description, quantity, and I want to add package quantity because maybe my company is standardized on complete packages instead of partials, we can generate that into a document. So this document is generated, and it's going to have all of that laid out pretty nice. We can size it appropriately. But on these terminal blocks that I put in, it's going to say that a package quantity standard is 100. So if we like to get a complete box, we can manipulate our quantities to 100 so to make sure we get that complete box when we're getting it in. A few other features I wanted to show. This is pretty neat. If we have a existing list of part numbers and we want to import them to get current availability or active status, we can just copy a list of part numbers and paste them directly into our equipment list, and it's going to load them one by one, but it's going to give you the estimated lead times and the active status and the list cost on that. That's a pretty neat tool. It saves you time if you've got an existing panel you need to duplicate, or just to try to migrate something. You can get all of these. If there's anything obsolete, it'll have a green arrow on it, and you can just double click it, and it will give you that migration path to a current part number. The one last thing I do want to show is in this product library, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is a partner library section where we can configure part numbers of Encompass partners of Rockwell. So we do need an enclosure for this system. We want it to be Hoffman. We can scroll down to the Hoffman tab, and we do want it to be a concept wall mount. So we can select this option, and the configuration is going to pop up similar to the Rockwell with a list of questions we need to ask or need to answer. Here in delivery section, if this ever pops up on a part, you can kind of configure things. It's going to give you that estimation. If it's a standard product, or if it's more engineered solution, it's going to say, hey, maybe this one's going to take a little bit longer time to get, and we can kind of base our selections off on how quickly we need it. This question that it's asking here is, are you looking for product based on material type or NEMA rating? For this case, we'll do material type, and when you click that, it's going to drill down a bunch of questions that needs answered. Our first question is material. So if we standardize on 304 stainless steel, we can hit that selection here. Primary features, our next question, we'll just stick with standard. NEMA type, if we are needing that for this application, we can select that here. Window, do we need a window or not? No, we don't. And then now the next questions are going to be height, width, and depth. I'll just arbitrarily pick 30 by 30 and a depth of 12 inches. Our next question is going to be panel selection. So yeah, we need a back panel. So we can go ahead and click that. And here we have our part number. We can go ahead and hit accept. The only thing with doing the partner library is it's not going to give you that list cost. It's just going to generate that catalog number for you. But it is very helpful if you're just trying to get everything onto one list and have it there in your report. Other than that, that's a pretty high level overview. If you do have any questions, like Lucas was saying, you can reach out to us and we can further elaborate on this.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kyle. I do want to put the contact information back up for you guys and your local specialist. Should be seeing that now. At this time, we will open the chat, or not the chat, I apologize, the Q&A up for any questions that you want to handle on screen. I know that there was a lot of information given to you guys, so don't feel obligated to. You can definitely reach out to these specialists listed here inside of your area to take a deeper dive into IAB and proposal works.